Okay. We're talking about the Wind Waker. So help me out a little bit. I know your name because you made the TAS for Wind Waker.
Yeah.
I've also heard your name, and I follow the game casually a little bit. So I've had my eye on Wind Waker for a while now. And your name has come up many times. So tell me who you are.
Sure. So I'm Trog. I'm a glitch hunter, speedrunner, maybe a little bit inadequate, but speedrunner. As you know at this point, a tasser.
Yeah.
So my primary, I guess you could say, my most active time, the time when I was spending the most time with this game, was probably between 2014 to 2019 or so, or 2020.
Okay.
But I still do some projects here and then. But
okay. When did you first really get into the community at all?
So
2014 or
the very first thing that I uploaded was a strategy for the forest for the Forbidden Woods boss.
Okay.
With the bombs. That was in 2013.
Okay.
Right at basically, I kind of joined in at an interesting point. I don't know how much you guys have all worked on as far as the history goes, but 2013 to 2014 was a really interesting transitionary period for the community. I kind of think of it in terms of almost like I don't know how familiar you are with basically I'm thinking like in terms of like the transition between the dinosaurs and then afterwards. Because Narcissa was the runner of that time period between 2012 or 2011 even to 2013. She was the one doing the runs. She was the one really pushing the game, really getting the community and motivated to keep moving forward and keep finding new stuff.
Right.
And then 2013, pretty much at the very end of 2013 is kind of when her last speed run was done, that 4-hour, 27-minute run. And then after that, that's kind of like when the meteor struck and, the whole community kind of got reset in a sort of way, and the mammals had to take over afterwards. the slow growth afterwards, trying to figure out, how do we fill this massive power vacuum that's come? And
that's a great description.
Thanks. That's kind of when I came in. Was I pretty much came up with a strat, and I remember I watching her try out my strat, and I was so happy with myself, felt so cool. And then pretty much maybe a few weeks after that, she was done with the game. So I got a nice exposure what it was like to be in that era, but mine was at the very end of it.
Yeah, I get you.
So then I started picking up the game and seriously in 2014, and that's when I started looking up, coming up with new setups and strategies for the game.
I get you.
I would kind of consider between like 2014 and 2016 maybe, basically a time period where we were making the game way more consistent to run. So if you are familiar with how speedrunning was done in 2013 and before then, you'll know that shortly after dry storage was found in 2012, you could super swim with camera lock. And I don't know if you need me to go into detail on that kind of stuff, but I can. But
I'll tell you what, no one else has really done it, so you tell me about it.
Sure. So super swimming with camera lock is super interesting. We knew that you could. So actually, how did it work first? Let me think about it. Super swimming. So if I remember correctly, let's see, glitches and stuff in 2010 found out that you could get a glitch state in the game called camera lock using the forest water. which you pull out the Wind Waker on the same frame that the forest water expires.
Mm-hmm.
And then what ends up happening is the game puts you in a state that if you pull out the Wind Waker again, you get into this glitch state where the camera is still locked in front of you like you're playing the Wind Waker, but you can still move around. And one of the interesting things about that was that if you hop in the water, the game really doesn't know how to handle you being in that camera locked state and in water collision at the same time. And if you just hold up, then that's when you start getting that massive amounts of negative speed, right? Mm-hmm. So we knew that you could get lots of crazy amounts of speed using that camera lock glitch. But the problem was that the amount of speed you got out of it felt entirely random. It was like, basically, you could charge it for, a good 30 seconds, release the control stick, and then, wait, why am I going speed of a snail? Where did all my speed go? And it felt random. And up until 2014 or so, it essentially was. Now that we have a better understanding, we actually kind of can calculate what the odds were of a good swim, because we understand super swimming to a degree at this point that we can actually we can confidently say that 1 out of 5 swims would have killed a lot, like over 60%, like would have killed, I guess, 40% of your speed, almost half.
Wow.
So it was really hard in that 2012, 2013 era when Narcissa and Demon were fighting it out for the record, that essentially 1 out of 5 times you're going to drown in the super swim. That's just something you just had to just admit it was going to happen.
Yeah.
So it made the run very random and very, very, very difficult to optimize, obviously. Because every lost super swim was probably like at least a minute and a half time loss, right?
Mm-hmm.
So figuring out, basically after 2013, one of the best, most important discoveries I think that was found was how to predict the kind of speed that you were going to get out of a super swim. That was done primarily by Woofer ZFG and Cries.
Mm-hmm.
They looked at, I don't want to get too technical here to avoid it getting pretty dry, but
it's all good. I actually I spoke with Woofer about this already. So
did you? Good.
You don't have to get too into detail.
Okay, cool, man. So yeah, that was probably one of the most important discoveries that was found during that time period, because it made the game. It turned the game into an actual. I'm not going to try to downplay the 2013, 2012 era, but it actually made it more of a speed run. It made it less of a roll of the dice game and hope to see, if you got to continue playing, and more of an actual, more execution based, right?
Yeah.
And so that's, from that time forward, I think that era was really just a matter of opening up new routes, because now that super swimming was more consistent, we could start throwing in longer super swims. Because back in the day, if you routing in something that was 3 quadrants long was considered insane. Because if you got bad luck, you were guaranteed to drown. But not only that, you needed decent luck. It wasn't a matter of that. When I said 1 in 5, 1 in 5 would be if you drown at a fairly short swim. You lose most of your speed, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would say maybe 1 in 4, 1 in 3, you would fail an average length swim, right? So the odds get worse and worse, right?
Yeah.
So one of the most infamous swims back in the day was swimming from Gale Island, where the Wind Temple is,
right,
all the way to Overlook Island. That was a 3 quadrant swim, and that was the longest swim that we thought was reasonable. That was one of the last things to get added, just simply because it was so random and so punishing if you failed it. You just got bad luck, right? And so now that we could actually consistently get those swims, that's where the times really started to go down. And it's quite amazing to me that we left 2013 era with Narcissa, I think, getting a 4:27.
Right.
And then pretty much until Chaotic Ace in 2016 got his 3:55. That was over 30 minutes of time with minimal new glitches, you could say.
Right.
Roll clipping was discovered. Gymnast may talk to you about that, but that saved a couple of minutes for sure. But a lot of that time came mostly from routing optimizations that I did and Woofer did, and just being able to consistently play the game in a fast manner.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that was actually that was a lot of my contributions in that time period, were finding strats to make the game less annoying to play. Because I love to speedrun the game, but there were certain things where I'm like, this is such an annoying part. Is there a setup I can come up with, or something that a new strategy that I can do to make this not a pain in the ass?
Yes.
And so, right. And like, even like a lot of the time it was a compromise. You may lose 5 seconds for doing this strategy, but if the old way was very inconsistent, and if you failed it, you would lose like 45 seconds. So like, one of the earliest things I guess that I worked on was the infamous skip in Tower of the Gods, where you could carry a statue across around a pillar. You could do like a kind of like a precise side hop to get around a pillar to skip some command melody stuff.
Right.
It's called it's Narcissa hop at this point, because Narcissa found it. But the original method was you just kind of have to scoot your way up to the pillar, get really, really close, and if you sneeze, you'll fall off of it. And then you need this really precise angle. And then if you fail it, then you're going into the void and you lose a minute. And I hated that trick so much that I probably spent, like, I can look at my old ZSR forum posts. I spent like over multiple weeks trying to come up with new setups to make it so I don't have to even think about it anymore.
Exactly. Right.
So, and I think that's an interesting thing about that time period, is that because that game was a 4-hour long run, you got to kind of pick and choose what things you wanted to go for. Did you want to, because there was a lot of different options that you had. You could go for a harder strategy if you wanted to, less consistent, but it's kind of like figuring out what strategies you wanted to go for that were going to not make you pull your hair out if you have to reset every single time.
I hear you.
Yeah. So that was one of the first things that I found was a setup for Narcissa hop, and I know Demon picked it up pretty quickly, and SVA did. Some people still do the old setup to this day, and I just have to shake my head.
I can't imagine why.
Dude, yeah. And I think Woofer is one of those guys who's adamant about sticking with the old setup, and I think I poke fun at him for that, but
more power to him. But,
yeah. So,
real quick before we continue,
totally.
Your mic is kind of popping a little bit.
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a Discord connection thing, or if it's like your cable is, I don't know, something or other. It's not that bad, so you don't have to like redo whatever you did. But I'm noticing it as you talk a lot. I'm like, should probably see if we can fix that real quick.
Okay, is it any better at this point, or
talk for a minute?
Sure. I know what the issue is, so definitely don't interrupt. You can just interrupt me if it starts being choppy.
Okay, this sounds better.
Cool. I use I don't know if I use voice meter for some settings, so sometimes it just glitches out, I guess.
Okay. No worries.
Cool.
Okay. So we were, let's see here. You were talking about strategies you found. You saw Narcissa Hop, the Narcissa Hop strat that you came up with. Were there any other other major sort of route changes that off the top of your head? Like obviously there's gonna be so many little optimizations, but any big ones that come to mind?
Definitely. So, and I may end up talking about that time period a lot. I apologize. We can talk about other stuff in the later time periods too. That's just where I'm the most knowledgeable when it comes to that history.
Yes, but this is what I want. So continue.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. So, let's see. So you've already talked to Woofer, and I'm sure he talked to you about a little bit about Leaf Early, that route change that he came up with, and then kind of tying into the whole consistency thing. One of the things that I was able to do once I started to really be active in the community was doing some route changes, utilizing the fact that super swims were more consistent at this point. And so we could incorporate, the infamous overlook swim in more locations now because, it's not that big of a deal. And that opened the world for a whole new route changes because we could super swim farther distances without risk. And so one of the first, I came up with a lot of garbage routes. My paste bin history is filled with all these trash route ideas, but some really bad ones. Yeah, real bad ones. But let's see. The first serious route change that I came up with to be incorporated was we called it the mother and child clip route.
Okay.
Basically, what it was is that I've kind of made a connection between two things where we have to get the fire. We had to get the fire and ice arrows at one point to beat the game.
Right.
And so afterwards, the original route at the time was you would get the fire and ice arrows, and then you would play the Ballad of Gales, warp away, do some chart collection stuff. But I made the connection from a strategy Ababob found. And I'm hoping you get to mention Ababob because he's really, really a big guy when it comes to the history of this game.
I've heard his name several times. Go ahead.
Yeah, so he's kind of like the original Tasser. Let's say when I picked up the game for tassing, my stuff was inspired by what he had done.
Okay.
And picked up a lot of what he discovered. And he discovered a lot back in 2012, 2013, right? So he discovered a way to clip out of Mother and Child Island with a bomb.
Okay.
Nothing crazy. Pretty standard stuff. But I made the connection that once you clip out of there, there's actually a wall, a ledge that hangs out of bounds in the mother and child area. And you can stand up in that area.
Okay.
And so that's important because you can pull out the Wind Waker when you're standing up and get camera lock to get the glitch to super swim.
Yeah.
So the connection that I made was that, hey, why don't we just clip out? We're already nearby an island we want to go to from Mother and Child Island. Let's just ledge clip out using Ababob's method and then climb up that ledge, activate camera lock, and super swim away. And go to the next place where we want to go because we're right by there. And so my route incorporated that. The original route that I came up with, and that was during the era, I guess, when Chaotic Ace was doing the primary of the runs, and he's a true hero of this game because I came up with some really evil, diabolical routes, and and he was willing to try them out and make them work. So seriously, he's been my friend for a long time at this point, and I don't know what I'd do without him. But so the original route that used that mother and child clip had to do an actually terrible super swim. I know I was saying before that super swims have been kind of figured out. They're not that big of a deal. But I came out with a truly monstrosity of a super swim that had to basically go from Fire Mountain all the way to Northern Fairy Island, which was at least almost an extra quadrant longer than what you had to do to Overlook. And you had to go through a bunch of, like, there's rafts everywhere. The ocean tends to unload, just despawn for a moment in that area. Oh, no. It's a truly nightmare of a swim, and it just barely works with that at the time. But he did it. My Ace was a true champion. And that route saved a minute and a half or so over the original chart collection route, just due to saving Ballad of Gales warps and wind changes and stuff like that. As a reminder, I guess, in the original Wind Waker, when it comes to routing at least, you can't there's no swift sail, right? So you want to minimize, in HD, you can kind of sail sometimes, especially in like the 100% category when you actually get the swift sail. Like, it's not that big of a deal. But in this game, you can almost super swim anywhere and it's going to save some time. If you can just find a good place to get the camera lock glitch in the first place, right? So, as far as super swimming, let's see, let me think. That's my trail of thought. Well, I guess anyways. So that mid-game route. I guess I was going to say that. So super swimming. No, I'm not talking about super swimming. I'm talking about the. Yeah, so you can. I guess I was talking about how super swimming incorporates you can super swim almost anywhere, because sailing is actually ridiculously slow in this game.
Yeah.
Right. So another thing is that there's no swift sail, so you can't change the wind with the sail. So every single time you want to sail somewhere, and you do have to sail in the old routes quite a bit just to pick up Triforce shards and stuff like that, things that you need the boat for. There's a lot of considerations when it comes to how the wind is set, where the wind is, because every single time that you want to change the wind, it's 15 seconds. And then every single time you want to warp with the Ballad of Gales, it's 30 seconds. And so a lot of the time that I spent with my routing was, okay, how can I come up with a route that minimizes the number of times we need to change the wind? And how can I minimize the number of times we need to warp? Because those are just like the most obvious things. If we can skip changing the wind, why are we changing the wind? Right.
Right.
So that mid-game route that I ended up coming up with ended up skipping 2 wind changes and like 2 warps. And already there, you already have a minute and a half of content that you're just skipping due to cutscenes.
Right.
Right. So I think it ended up saving by the end of it around 2 minutes. But yeah, that super swim from Fire Mountain to Northern Fairy was horrendous, and thankfully it only lasted for like a couple months, because shortly afterwards I ended up resolving it. I had this tendency in my history of coming up with something that probably should ruin the game, but then coming up and figuring out, okay, here's something you can do that's a little bit easier, a little bit better. So I have a history of trashing and saving the game within a short period of time.
Constantly going back and forth between like destroying the game and saving it.
Yep. So I guess in this case, the saving trick was a clip that I found called Earth God's Lyric Early. And it's kind of a precise clip that in the Headstone Island quadrant that let you get into the Earth God's Lyric area without needing the power bracelets. And really, so it's kind of interesting because you can do that clip. You could literally, it would be so amazing. Oh my God, there's a lot of things about this game that would just be amazing if the programmers were considering us at all. But so you can get into the headstone area and learn the Earth God's Lyric song pretty much right away from the beginning of the game. Like you can get into that area really early. But, and it would actually help, it would have helped a lot in the older routes to be able to do that. But the game crashes if you try to learn the song too early.
Interesting.
There's a series of flags the game checks for, but the important one here is the game requires you, for whatever reason, to have watched the Helmerach cutscene when you first, after you your second visit to Helmerach, when you're supposed to, like you're actually saving your sister for real, and then Tetra comes away, and that cutscene is, for whatever reason, the most important cutscene in this entire game, because it sets 1 bit in the code, 1 bit from a 0 to a 1, and once that bit is set, every cutscene that normally is supposed to play after that, just natural progression wise, can actually play normally. And every cutscene before that happens, so early game cutscenes, like the cutscene where you get the delivery bag,
right,
crashes. So it's just like this switching bit flag that makes late game cutscenes play, early game cutscenes crash. So
man, they really wanted you to do that right halfway through the game.
And it is pretty much, even in the speedrun back in the day, it was like right at the halfway point too. So I figured out that you could get into there early in a fairly fast way, without losing too much time. And even though the power bracelets are required to beat the game, it just worked out routing wise to delay getting the power bracelets later on.
Right.
And doing that clip. And that clip, most importantly, allowed us to skip that horrendous, nasty swim. And the super swims in general were just much faster, much easier to do. The only trade-off is that you had to do that one ledge clip, and it was kind of a pain. But it saved like 20 seconds, and people were more than happy to go for a slightly hard ledge clip, but avoid that horrendous, nasty swim. So that was, right. As far as the mid game goes, and during my time period, that was what I contributed. A lot of optimizations when it comes to cutting out warps, cutting out, just kind of just streamlining the process, streamlining the route a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that was a lot, and that's good. So that gives me a lot to go with. So,
cool, man.
Yeah, you mentioned Chaotic Ace, and tell me about Ace as a runner.
Sure. So, well, I will tell you, the first time I remember watching Ace, I was watching him, and he was not using my setup in Tower of the Gods. It was back in 2014. I know but what was interesting is that he came up with his own setup. Oh. And that's when I know that he was a cool dude, because he's one of those guys that if he doesn't like how something's going to work, he's going to figure out a way that he likes to do it. And I think he really had the right mentality of how can I push this game to as far of a degree as possible without driving me insane. And I think he really succeeded in that. I mean, he pretty much from 2014 until 2016 is when he got his 355. I could be wrong. But during that time period, man, he was on the grind. He was really pushing what it meant to be optimal in this game. Everyone always likes to joke about how the early game, the outset part of the game, that was like the only optimal time. Like everyone would be like, oh, what was your outset time? Did you get sub 1550? Like you're not a real runner if you don't do that. But then afterwards they'd fail like 4 super swims or, have trash end games.
Yeah.
But like he is the one that really just like, how can I optimize every single aspect of this game? How can I sail to this treasure chart and collect it in the fastest, most optimal way possible? Like things that like people just like, oh, I have to do this, whatever.
Yeah.
He actually like figured it out and broke down each individual aspect of this game. And speaking that it was over 4 hours long, there was a lot of content that he had to break down and really figure out what's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Talking to him, he was describing like, oh, I just got a gold split, but I failed like a jump there. Like I could do that better, right? I can do this better, right? And just constantly being like, I can do this better. I can go back and I can squeeze a little more time out of this every single time.
Right. And I know that's like a common trope, like with a lot of like top runners who, like they'll figure out, they'll really push the game to its ultimate limits. But at least for me, I'm obviously biased, but when it comes to the Wind Waker, it's a kind of game that almost actively tries to stop you from making it optimal. The game itself is trying really hard to make you not care. Make you not care about, whatever. I'll just fish up this Triforce shard, and if I lose 10 seconds trying to get to it, whatever, I don't care. I just want to get to the cool stuff. Right?
Yeah.
But man, he was just every single aspect he wanted to make sure. Like, it wasn't enough for him to make a super swim. It was important to him to make sure that he did the swim fast. Like when I run the game, or when some other people run the game, they'll be like, "Oh, thank God I didn't drown." Whatever, cool. Let's move on. But he'd be like, "Oh crap, I lost 5 seconds to that super swim because I had to do extra turns and lost speed or whatever." Right. But yeah, I think it's a common trope to say that, like he pushed the game, but I think it speaks, it has more weight in this game, I feel.
Yeah.
It's
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were describing like, oh man, I just did a super swim, like, and I didn't drown. Yes, that's me. Me as a speedrunner. It's like, oh, thank God, the trick worked. Woo!
Right.
Let's move on.
Right. and I think and I guess like one of the things that's he really, really pushed in the game is getting storage consistently, because storage is a frame perfect trick. Right. And every single attempt probably takes 3 to 5 seconds to go for.
Right.
And I mean, even to me, when I'm playing this game, I'm like, all right, let's just, if I get it second, if I get a third try, whatever, we'll just move on. But to Ace, it's like, if I don't hit this frame perfect trick first time, every single time, I'm losing minutes. When it comes to a 4-hour game over the length of the entire game.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what makes this game so, during that time period, what made it so difficult is that things as simple as storage, like the most basic things, as far as speedrunning this game, you had to have the iron will to care about all 75 storages, and they all have different timings. Right? It's different height timing, so that the storage trick itself is frame perfect, but different each time.
Exactly.
It's a different frame perfect trick. So he learned at least 75 different frame perfect tricks that he could hit consistently.
Yeah.
Right. Those are different muscle memory things just that he just had in his fingertips at all times. And I think that's just crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and things like as simple as another thing I guess I could say about him is just he was the king of just minor optimizations. He was the king of, I think you were saying earlier about the jump, like, oh, that jump lost me some time. But just his rolling, the way that he rolled around the game, his just general movement was just so flawless. He never dropped rolls. He always chained them correctly. He didn't have any spaces between his rolls. And you think like, okay, who cares? But this is a 4-hour run. If you can save a few frames every single time, you're going to, like every minute you're saving a few frames, and you're talking like 15, 20 seconds by the end of the run. Right? So he's just one of those guys that I remember I was working on a practice task. I was just trying to play the game on an emulator and just play through the intro part of the game with my controller and see how fast I could do it. Mm-hmm. And I would compare to Ace I would just play it side by side to see how well I'm doing. And like every single time consistently, I'm losing time. I'm losing over a second just getting the telescope in the game. I'm like, well, how the heck is this even possible? We've barely even done anything yet.
Yeah.
Like it came down to things like how fast you can mash through the text, like things that you just don't care about, but he cared about.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
All right. So there's 2 more things I really want to get from you.
Cool.
Because we're already going at like 40 minutes. I don't want to go.
I don't want to talk your ear off too.
Don't want to go terribly long. But so I want to talk to you about the tasks that you did.
Sure.
Just get your general feeling on stuff that you did for that, and I want to talk to you about barrier skip stuff.
Totally, man. Totally.
So let's start off with the task. When did your task come out?
So my task came out 20. I honestly cannot remember. I think it's 2016. That sounds right. Though I'm going to double check for you, so I don't give you anything.
I want to say it's 2016 or the end of 2017, end of 2016, because I could have sworn I watched it on the plane to AGDQ 2017.
Nice. Oh, nice. Yeah, it was. Yes, summer of 2016.
Oh, summer. Okay, maybe I put it on my watch later list for a while.
Yeah. So. Okay. So the task. I cannot talk about this task without bringing up a lot of people who made it possible.
Of course.
I think, as I was mentioning earlier, Abubob.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've seen any other tasks of this game, but like I strongly look up Abubob and some of his work in progresses of this game. Mm-hmm. They're really entertaining to begin with, but they're just really well done. And he was always supposed to be the guy to come up to do the first Wind Waker task. Everyone was telling him, when are you going to do that first Wind Waker task? And that was during a time period when it was easily going to be a 3-hour run. And he did multiple tries. And, when it comes to tasking Dolphin emulator, mm-hmm. you have to deal with the fact that it's just not 100% consistent. There's going to be times where the game will just desync on you, and you just have to retry it and try it again. Drop whatever mm-hmm. progress you did up until that point and do it over. And so it can be really demoralizing. It can be just you're fighting the emulator as much as you are trying to play the game.
Right.
And when it comes to a almost 3-hour run, it's a huge task. But so a lot of how I picked up tasking was through him. A lot of his strategies, a lot of his techniques as far as movement goes, I picked up from him.
Right.
I also can't not bring up the fact that in 2015, just a year before my task came out, Gymnast came out with a task. Gymnast came. He had I think it was like a 3-hour, 8-minute task. Which was just an absolute joy to watch. And honestly, it made my tasks way better at that point. So I was already working on my tasks when he released his. And for me, I'm like, this is a gift. This is a great gift that I can just look at and say, am I doing this fast? I can compare strategies and go side by side and say, okay, did I lose time here, or how much time did I save? It gave me something to compare to. So it was just immensely helpful to have that resource, because obviously at that point in time, there were no tasks done of how to fight Dark Nuts or how to clear this room of enemies or how to execute this room in this dungeon because it hadn't been done before. So Gymnast stuff, while a lot of it did reference, it was a lot of RTA strategies for some of it. Some of it wasn't fully optimized, of course, but it really lent me a lot of confidence that what I was doing was optimal or at least fast.
Yeah.
So that was definitely an important resource. But by far the most important resource during the creation of the tasks is Dragonbane Zero. And I hope it gets mentioned multiple times because that guy, probably one of the closest friends that I have in this community, he is responsible for a lot of the behind the scenes work of this game, coming up with tools and coming up with a custom emulator for this game that minimizes desyncs. It can detect desyncs. It can run scripts. It has its own custom display screen, info screen. Like it's an amazing tool, and I had full access to it at that point. But what really, really made this task, I think, something special was the fact that Dragonbane added support for the Tingle Tuner. And getting that to work, I don't think I could speak it justice. I think you might have to interview him to have you go through all the technical details if you ever wanted it. But getting the task to use the Tingle Tuner was always a dream. It was always like, if the task would be so sick if you could have the Tingle Tuner. Like you have to get it anyways. The game requires you to get the Tingle Tuner to free tingle. Like, why can't we just turn that damn thing on?
Yeah.
Right. And so when I was ready to start working on this task, I was begging Dragonbane, hey, do you have any ideas on how to make this work? He's like, yeah, we can make it work. We can do this. And then, within a few months, we have a beta version that I'm testing out. And a few revisions later, it's a fully functional. It's not fully functional, I should say. It's a functional Tingle Tuner that you can use in a task environment. And by not fully functional, I should clarify, it doesn't do things like display the screen on the Tingle Tuner. So you like on the Game Boy Advance, you can there's a little map that you can look at, but every single command that the game receives is all being executed as if there was a Tingle Tuner connected. The analogy that I give is like imagining as if you had plugged in an Arduino or something into the game, into your second controller slot, and convincing the game that there was a Tingle Tuner connected.
Right.
You're not modifying the game at all. You're just convincing the game, hey, I have a Tingle Tuner connected and it's sending me commands. I should go ahead and execute them.
Right.
So that's kind of how that works. But getting the Tingle Tuner to work really opened up the doors to whole new routing possibilities and glitch exploits. And it just made it a whole joy to work with. The whole tasking process itself was, for the most part, it was a joy. It was some of the best times of my life, for sure. Going through countless streams, going through and playing through this huge game.
Yeah.
Because I know it's hard to think about an era before barrier skip. Mm-hmm. But this game was long. This game was real long. Yeah. And the whole task really was kind of a journey. It was a journey, a multi-year journey of slowly frame by frame playing through this game. And thankfully, there weren't really too many discoveries at that point to ruin it, because that's always the concern when it comes to these long tasks is that some brand new glitch is going to ruin the whole task. So right. I guess I could say that if there's any upside to that period of time between 2014 up until actor unloading was discovered, I guess, where there were minimal glitches found. Minimal glitches. I guess the one benefit you could say is that it was a stable environment for a 3-hour-long task to be made.
Yes. Perfectly said.
Yes. There would not be my task would not have been made if barrier skip was found. It would in the middle of it.
Dropping it immediately.
Yeah. Exactly. So I hope that that task serves as a nice historical marker for what the games community had done up until that point. It kind of serves as like a snapshot. Like, here's all the glitches and here's all the knowledge that we have at this point in time in our history.
Absolutely.
Right. So I don't know how much you want me to go in detail, but the task itself, as far as specifics, let's see. When you have the Tingle Tuner active, the biggest thing, one of the most, I guess, visually interesting things that you have access to is being able to super swim with the combination of a Tingle Balloon.
What is a Tingle Balloon?
So the Tingle Balloon is an item that lets you fly in the air for 5 seconds. It's basically a game. It's basically a game that lets you. It's an item that lets you walk off an edge and pretend that the edge doesn't exist. You can just walk on the air, right?
Okay.
I don't know why the developers came up with it. It's completely useless in any practical sense. I don't even know how you would have fun with it. But it is a dream. It's basically almost as if for one time, the developers decided, you know what? Speedrunners are going to love this item. Let's throw this thing in here. Let's throw this thing in here, right? And so it's just so useful to be able to have access to an item that basically lets you cheat for 5 seconds. Yeah. Have no floor collision, no floor detection for 5 seconds. And so the task takes full advantage of that, because what it does is that it takes that power in combination with the speed that you get out of a super swim. So for 5 seconds, you can basically be in the air going at the speed of a super swim and going wherever the heck you want to go. Flying throughout the ocean. One of the bigger things is that you can do, that I discovered, I guess, is that you can get into the Ice Ring Island early using that trick. And honestly, it's probably one of the more insane things I've ever pulled off, even through tassing. It's very difficult to explain, but essentially, the Ice Ring Island, if you recall, normally requires you to use the fire arrows on.
Right.
And you have to unfreeze it, right? And then you drop in the loading zone. However, that loading zone always exists. You just have to figure out a way to get into it without getting frozen. Because you may also recall that if you touch anywhere on that island, anywhere, you get frozen, voided out, respawned, right?
Right.
So the trick is getting to the island fast enough before the ice fully loads, right? Okay. And getting into the spot where the loading zone is before the ice fully loads and you get frozen. But to do that, the loading zone's up in the air, right? So how do we get into the area how do we get to the island in the air fast enough before the island fully loads? And the trick to that is the Tingle Balloon. You activate the Tingle Balloon, you get some height from a nearby island, launch off of that island going super fast with height, and get to the loading zone fast enough before it fully loads and you hop in. And that lets you get the iron boots without needing the fire and ice arrows.
Man.
And that was probably one. So I cannot, again, this is funny because the original method of doing that trick was found by Abubob. he figured out a way to get into that island with door cancel, which is another completely different trick, and then zombie hovering all the way across the ocean, going zombie hovering in a whole quadrant to get into it. So not very practical.
Yeah.
But the potential was there. The potential was there. He proved that it was at least possible, because up until that point, it wasn't even, no one even figured you could get into that loading zone at all, no matter what.
Yeah.
And another quirk, I guess I should say, is that it's amazing that he even found it to begin with, because it only works on the Japanese version of the game. They patched that glitch, whether you believe it or not, once they released the English and PAL versions of the game. It's one of the very few version differences. There's not many version differences as far as glitches go in this game. But they actually patched it so that if you try to enter the Ice Ring Island or the Fire Mountain Island without the need of without freezing or thawing the islands, you get sent back out, you get kicked out, and you can't get the item. But in the Japanese version, it works fine.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting. It's one of those minor version differences that you would, to even pull off to begin with, is a pain, just to be able to test it.
Yeah.
Right. So the task got to use that. That was super. And the ultimate goal of getting the iron boots early is to actually skip the fire and ice arrows entirely. The task never collects the fire and ice arrows, so it gets to skip that over 2 minute long cutscene with the fairy, giving you the fire and ice arrows.
Right.
I guess the second component to that is the getting into the Fire Mountain early, which is actually it's an easier thing. It's literally as simple as zombie hovering and then just falling into the volcano. You can just fall into the volcano if you have enough height. I've actually theorized a glitchless way of doing it by using a tingle balloon and leaping over from a nearby platform, which is maybe why they patched it. I'm not sure. But essentially, if you can get into the volcano's mouth, I'm not a geologist, I'm not sure what you call it.
Yeah, I guess.
If you can fall into there, the loading zone works, and you can get the power bracelets. So that's the second component, and that's the easier one. But so that task got to skip fire and ice arrows. It also got to utilize a method of getting the leaf earlier than even real-time runs today get it. The leaf is obviously one of the best items in the game. You do get to cheat with that item. You get to fly where the heck you want with it. So getting it really early is super useful for a task. It would be great for real-time runs too if there was an easy way to do it. But the journey of the community figuring out how to get the leaf before going to the first visit of Forsaken Fortress is almost a whole story in itself. It's quite fascinating the whole time, like all the theories that we came up with at Ababob and I and Mug 1991, lots of people working on trying to figure out how can you get the Deku Leaf without the need of a sword. And there was the ultimate, while the original method of finding it, which I think I found, there's some convoluted method that I ended up finding in 2015, I think. That method wasn't used because the Tingle Tuner is broken. It ended up saving quite a bit of time to be able to get the leaf even earlier than normal, essentially. Normally, we normally get the leaf pretty early in the speedrun, but the task gets it extra early. So it saves even more time. Extra early, yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. But
All right.
Yeah, the whole project was it's humbling to work on something that long and that fights you. It fights you all the time. The game tries to constantly tries to tell you you can't do this optimally. There's just no way. So the game feels random at some points, and how fast you'll go out of a super swim, or you'll have weird roll collision where all of a sudden you'll lose all of your speed in a roll. The bosses themselves are just super random. The game really doesn't think that you should be speedrunning it, but this whole community has told it otherwise, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And I think I think the task has been a good statement of that.
Okay. Last but not least, I want to pick your brain a little bit about barrier skip.
Sure, man. Because
you were around in that sort of earlier days, but you were just around in general of like, Narcissa made that video. I think it was Barrier Skip 101. Right?
I can't be skipped.
Yeah. And it's a really good synopsis of like, why is this problem so difficult? Right. And as someone who's a bit of a glitch hunter, I imagine that you are on the forefront. You're on the front lines of how do we throw ourselves at this wall and how do we get through it?
Right.
Tell me a little bit about just the process of like some of your ideas of like, how do we try to beat this, in a run? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally, man. So I think it's interesting because when I joined, I joined at the time period where we had pretty much eliminated all of the easy to understand methods to test. The method of zombie hovering over, right? Everything that Narcissa explained in her video, things that you can actually explain pretty straightforward in a video, had been tested, right? There's only so many combinations of things that you could try for the most part. When it came to it from my testing, it really did come down to testing the very convoluted, very complicated theories. Abu Bob was infamous for some of his theories regarding using storage in the death cutscene to cancel the barrier cutscene, the barrier knockback cutscene. A lot of the theories that I tested utilized very basically would have always been task only, because I'm a tasker at heart. I know that I'll never be good at actually playing this game in real time. So you know what? I don't really care. I'll make the real time runners cry. I'm going to come up with something so stupid and so convoluted that's never going to be done in real time. But I just want the damn thing to be possible. All right. So a lot of the ideas that I came up with, utilizing basically an iteration of some of Abu Bob's ideas, with mostly utilizing the death warp cutscene or using forest water. Basically frame perfectly using the forest water to cancel the knockback of the barrier. Lots of dumb ideas, lots of very dumb ideas that felt like they should have worked, but there was just one missing variable that needed to be cracked. I think it's funny how ultimately the solution that we use now did turn out to be a really relatively simple solution, and part of my heart, kind of when I was coming up with these stupid convoluted methods, like my heart was kind of telling me like, this seems too ridiculous. Like there's got to be something easier. There's got to be. There's something that we haven't thought of.
Yeah.
Right. I guess I do have to mention this. So what was it? I think it was in 2015. 2015, I think, was a critical moment in this game's history, whether we realize it or not, because Chaotic Ace discovered a clip in Diamond Step Island that used a bomb, and this may sound familiar to some people who are familiar with this speedrun nowadays, that utilized dropping a bomb behind you and using it to partially clip through a wall right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously that's exactly how the barrier skip works nowadays. And so the joke, the meme in that time period was, oh, clearly this is the method to use barrier skip. We just need to drop a bomb behind us and we'll clip through the wall. And I remember Christopher Lee had a hilarious Twitter post pretending basically as an April Fool's kind of esque prank, saying, here's me dropping a bomb behind me, clipping through the barrier. Got it, guys. Where's my 1K? And so I think that was a critical missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, we got frighteningly close to finding it 5 years ago, basically 6 years ago. So I utilized a tool in 2015 with Dragonbane's awesome scripting tools that basically replicated what that glitch, that bomb pushing clip did in Diamond Step. I was trying to use that to prove whether or not barrier skip worked or not. And the script that I was running was basically pretending as if Link was getting pushed with 40 units of speed. But the clip, in this case, needs 52 units of speed. So if I had been testing earlier and just used a higher speed value for my script, then it's a good chance that barrier skip could have been found back then.
Yeah.
And I think I am partially to blame for that. I do have to admit that, where I think it was always a meme that the barrier skip was going to work with the bomb. So back in that time period, I tested it fairly casually to see if it was going to work or not. I didn't really have. It was also a very demoralizing time period, I should say. Barrier skip has always been a meme, and a very demoralizing meme, I should say. So the script, I didn't push it as hard as I could have, for sure. And then I told the community, okay, I tried it. 40 units of speed, never got the clip. Let's move on, boys. This trick is dead.
Yeah.
Right. Let's find something else. And then Bowser's board. Basically, it took someone who wasn't around to hear me tell them otherwise. Someone new, someone had a fresh mind, someone that was willing to retest something, right? Someone that wasn't as clouded, one of those old guys like me.
You speak so harshly.
I know. It's part of it, but Bowser's board is proof that we have new blood in this community. That this community is new. That this community is entering a new era, or really, it has entered a new era of new leaders, new glitch hunters, new passionate people in this game. Because no one in their right mind, of my friends, of the people that I know and respect and love dearly in this community, would have thought to try that again. Would have okay, Trog tested it, it didn't work. Let's just find something else.
Yeah.
But it took someone who doesn't, who's not necessarily, was not as deeply connected to the community as some of the other people at the time, to say, you know what, I'm going to try this. And he did a more thorough test, and he deserves all the credit, without a doubt. So
there you go.
I think it's a fascinating story. I think that 2015 time period was a very critical moment. A very critical. I don't want to make it sound like a depressing moment, because in the end, we all ended up we did end up finding it.
Yeah.
And then of course you also have the original method of skipping the barrier, which basically was my idea of using a convoluted method. The whole actor on basically, we can't skip the barrier, so let's just remove the barrier method. What if we just delete it? Then we can go through it, right?
Just delete the barrier for it.
Let's just delete the barrier, right? And so obviously we had we knew. So we with Dragonbane's help, we knew that there was a way to unload the barrier. I think it was like 2017 or so. If I had to categorize certain things, I would say that 2014 to 2016 was the era of optimization, the era of really the era of ace, the ace mentality. Mm-hmm. I'm going to optimize every single living snot out of this game and make sub 4 happen. New glitches or new tricks or not. Yeah. Right. And then after 2016 was the first really foray into the memory understanding, basically understanding more fundamentally on how the game works and how it structures its heap, its memory structure. Mm-hmm. And all of that was spearheaded by Dragonbane. We knew that if you did some weird stuff in Wind Temple, you could unload a Songstone. You could just make it disappear. Just make the game forget it existed. Mm. And then the crazy thing is that Gymnast figured out that, hey, once I've unloaded this Songstone, if I go to another file, a completely independent file, and then go to a completely independent Songstone, like let's say the one that lets you get into Earth Temple, completely independent, not even in Wind Temple. Yeah. It's gone too. Like it's just all Songstones in every single file have just been deleted.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's crazy. And so that's where Dragonbane came in. He's like, okay, it's time to figure this crap out. What's going on? Right. And so he really did figure out, I'm not going to go too technical here, but he figured out on how the trick works. And more importantly, what causes it? How do we make these things unload? Mm-hmm. And his first not practical, but his first demonstration of the power of this glitch is that he was able to unload the entire Tower of the Gods dungeon. The entire Tower of the Gods thing in the ocean.
Wow.
You could just delete it on every file. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And then importantly, what was so cool about that is that it actually causes so that like cute cutscene where you place all the pearls and Link gets launched into the wall and splat and is hilarious. Mm-hmm. When the Tower of the Gods is getting raised, you can cause that cutscene to fail to load with that. You can basically skip that cutscene. If the Tower of the Gods can never load to begin with, then you can obviously the cutscene's not going to play, right? So it just doesn't load. But what's crazy about that is then you're placed onto this weird map, the cutscene map where the game is supposed to play that silly cutscene. If you save the game on that weird cutscene map and then reload your file, the game puts you on top of Tower of the Gods, where you can then ring the bell and go straight down. So you can skip all of Tower of the Gods with that trick.
Fascinating.
The only problem, just a minor problem, is that Dragonbane's setup required you to like pull out the sail like 200 times. so it wasn't exactly the most useful thing.
Yeah.
But it was fascinating. It was really the first, it was the first big leap into understanding on how the game loads its actors and it plays its cutscenes. Mm-hmm. After that, a lot of that time period, again, like part of the memory corruption era, I guess you could say. After that, I worked on utilizing a glitch that had been known for a long time called the invisible bomb glitch. Mm-hmm. Found
quick,
by
before you say that,
is my mic?
Your mic's popping a little bit. Yeah.
All right, how's it sound?
Say a little more. I thought I heard it pop again.
Sure.
Oh yeah, it's worse.
All right, how about I just switch to off of this then? All right. How about now?
Good.
All right, cool. Just turn that off for now. So, okay. Where was I? Invisible bomb. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was a silly, stupid glitch that High Exhaust. Don't know if you've heard of him yet, but he's done some minor work, some minor glitch finding and stuff like that. He's been an awesome member of the community.
Mm-hmm.
But a member called High Exhaust found a very useless, seemingly, I guess I should say, seemingly useless glitch called the invisible bomb glitch. And the end result is that Link pulls out a bomb, and as you might expect, it's invisible. And the crazy part about it is that the game forgets, it pulls out a bomb, so like you'll see like the fuse and stuff, but there won't be the blue texture of the bomb.
Right.
Right. So the game forgets it exists, essentially. And it will stay in memory as a corrupted actor. And so I worked on a script to basically say, okay, what happens if we load in 200 of these invisible bombs? Right. Let's just fill up this actor space with so much crap data.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what happens to the game. And as you might expect, the game, for the most part, does not like it and crashes promptly.
I would assume, yeah.
But in very certain circumstances, if you fill it up in the right way, you can cause certain crazy things to unload. The first thing that I found shortly after Dragonbane managed to cause the Tower of the Gods to unload is I found out a way to cause Tower of the Gods to unload with the invisible bomb glitch. Yeah. And then shortly after that, I found a way to skip several cutscenes. So like that Helmrock cutscene, the super important one we were talking about earlier with Forsaken Fortress.
Yep.
And you can skip that one. You can skip the Tower of the Gods one. And then, you could unload a lot of actors with that. And so then the question was, okay, invisible bombs are cool and all, but can you unload the barrier with it? And the problem is that we could not figure out a way to fill up, because you could only do the invisible bomb glitch on the ocean in the overworld, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you had to figure out a way of, let's fill up the game's memory with so much crap and then somehow get through all of the cutscenes in Forsaken Fortress and in Hyrule to get down into there to get the barrier to unload. The problem is that the game really does not like I said before, really does not like all that crap data in there. So the problem is that we could not get enough memory to fill up and get down into the barrier skip area, get into Hyrule without the game crashing. So that was the fun part. And basically what Dragonbane ended up finding is basically a way to do the invisible bomb glitch, but using arrows. And I guess I shouldn't say that it was Dragonbane that found it, because it was someone else. I don't remember who found it, but someone figured out a way to basically replicate what the invisible bomb glitch does using arrows, and you could do it anywhere. And that was the final nail in the straw. Once you could basically fill up the memory structure anywhere you wanted, then Dragonbane proved that, hey, let's just grab the bow, go down to Hyrule, do this silly setup of pulling out arrows for 200 times, and then the barrier just deletes itself. Cool, barrier skip solved. So that was, and then Gymnast did a run afterwards after that. So that was the first actual method of barrier skip, and it fulfilled my dream of having a very obscure convoluted method of having barrier skip. Right. So so after that, it came down to, between 2017 to 2019 was really just, how can we control the actor space? How can we manipulate this to our benefit? A with the ultimate goal, obviously, of unloading the barrier. And honestly, that's for anyone wondering, to tie back to the tasking question, when the next any % task is coming out. Obviously, my 2 hour, 46-minute task is pretty outdated, right?
Yeah,
It might be able to save a couple minutes, I would think.
Yeah.
When's the next any % task coming out? And the problem at this point is that actor unloading is not solved. Actor unloading is potentially the most powerful glitch in this game. You can basically snap your fingers and delete something at will if you had enough control over it.
Yeah.
I don't like that thing exists. It's gone, right?
Just Thanos snap it out of existence.
You basically just Thanos snap. Like basically the any % route basically consists of unloading every single thing that doesn't cause the game to soft lock or crash. So like the Ganondorf cutscene at the very end of the game, it's gone. Tetra does the door to get into, you have to do the trials skip.
Mm-hmm.
You have to skip that door. Wow, that door is pretty inconvenient. Let's just delete that. Or how about it getting past Phantom Ganon in Ganon's tower? You have to do some crazy stuff with out of bounds clips with storage and stuff. Why don't we just delete the door, right? So it's the possibilities are endless when it comes to actor unloading. But the problem, like I was mentioning earlier, is that it's not solved. We don't know fully how to control it. We don't know fully how to predict it. We have setups that make it semi-consistent, but it's like we're kind of coming back to the Super Swim era, the 2012, 2013 era, where something will work. Like you'll get that Super Swim speed and it'll work, but sometimes it won't, and we don't know why. And so that's the problem, is that sometimes things don't work. We'll have a setup, but sometimes the barrier won't unload, or a cutscene will just play normally. And that is yet to be solved. So when it comes to an any % task, the problem is that we have more work to do. There's a lot more work to do when it comes to being able to exploit that glitch to its fullest. I'm actually currently working on a task specifically called no manual super swimming, and it doesn't utilize any of those glitches. Just simply because the fact that we're still waiting. Basically, we're waiting on tools and people to help us figure out how this glitch, this actor unloading glitch, works truly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the next thing for anyone harassing me about that. There you go. There's your answer.
There you go. That's the answer.
Yep.
All right. I will be waiting with bated breath.
Yeah, it's gonna be a speedy one. Once we figure it out, it'll be a pretty quick one. Let's just say that the intro cutscene is probably going to be a good fifth of the task.
I imagine. Once you have full control, you're like, all right, cool.
All right, what's the lead? I think goodbye.
Yeah, get the hell out of here.
Yeah, and I think also that comes back to the any % task, is that it's I think it's good to have that snapshot. It's good to have that demonstration of here's how the run looked like back then, and here's how it really is as glitchy and as crazy as it is. It fully the story is intact. It's kind of amazing. Like you still have to do quite a bit as the game intends you to do it. We still upgrade the Master Sword as you're intended to do it. We still save our sister from Forsaken Fortress. We collect all the Triforce shards. We do everything that a casual player would have done when they first played the game. And
Right.
so I think at least for me, because I first played this game I think I played it when it first came out, 2003. It does serve that kind of nostalgic bit where you get to see the game played in a way as almost as if the developers intended, but obviously the methods used to follow along with those series of steps is so far removed from what you did casually. It's that interesting mix.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but anyways, yeah, the new any percent task is going to be lightning fast once we got one more hurdle to fix, and after that, I think you can expect one shortly.
All right. Okay, Trog. I think that'll do.
Hey, great. Thanks for hearing me, talking to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, man. If you got anything else, don't hesitate to holler at me.
Absolutely.
Cool, man.
End the recording here and